Hello, everyone. This is Monica Wisdom. How are you doing? I think I need to put my headphones in, but where are they? Oh, I don't know. Well, hopefully this will work. Hopefully this will work. I have a really good microphone. Anyway, hi, this is Monica Wisdom. Sorry for the faulty start. I just realized I didn't have my headphones in. We're going to talk today about I'm going to take you a little bit behind the scenes of the Black Women Amplified podcast. And I am the host and the podcast producer and the founder of Black Women Amplified. I'm also an author, not author, writer, although I have co written a book, writer, entrepreneur, and a life and business coach. And I help women live their best lives and amplify their voices, share their stories, and monetize their genius. So I'm excited to be with you today, and I want to talk about behind the scenes of our latest episode, The Power of Pleasure. Season 3, which we are coming to an end of season 3, I wanted to have conversations with, for, and about Black women when it comes to our self-care, because self-care is so essential for us. Self-care is um, it's not just something we do to make ourselves feel good. It actually needs to be a lifestyle for us. And the precipice of this season, season 3, was all about self-care, the season of you, meaning you as Black women on this planet. And when I was studying, I studied over the summer with Cornell University. I studied women's entrepreneurship. And in doing research for my project, which I use Black Women Amplified as my project, I discovered there's no research on Black women, and I couldn't figure out why. And then I came across this um, article, and this article stated that Black women are excluded from several medical studies due to weathering because of racism. So essentially, the article says that women are Black women specifically, because this article is about Black women, and it's on the Yale College of Medicine website. If you want to Google Yale College of Medicine Black women weathering, and the article will pop up and you can read it for yourself. But it essentially talks about how racism is literally the stress of racism, the experiences of racism are causing us to get sicker earlier than many groups. So I'm trying to figure out what am I going to do to contribute to us getting better as Black women? And it's just not just mental wellness or physical wellness, but just being good, right? Just being completely um just being well all the way around. And I wanted to have a conversation. I wanted to have conversations in season 3 with people who were experts in the field for different parts of that conversation, whether it's financial wellness, mental wellness, discovering your self discovery, putting yourself first, all the different conversations that are on season 3. And you can find most of them on this YouTube page, but you can also go to your favorite podcast platform and hear it. So, one thing I definitely want to talk about is something that Black women, we don't talk about like freely. Now, younger generations, I'm Generation X. So when I speak, I typically speak for my generation, Generation X. We don't talk about sex like that. We might giggle about it or have conversations every once in a while. We're not as free with the conversation. And we're of a particular age where, you know, we're feeling like we have different conversations. And so I wanted to have a conversation that was smart, studied, um, and with people who were not like, I didn't want to talk about in this conversation, not that I won't in the future, but I didn't want to talk about like sexual positions and sexual experiences, but I wanted to talk about the power of femininity and our sexuality. And So it took me about 2 months to find somebody to have this conversation. This conversation, and it was really brought out. I have two girlfriends that I talked to, um, that are like my sister friends that we've been friends for almost 20 years, and we met at a goddess retreat in North Carolina many moons ago. When I started studying the divine feminine. I studied the divine feminine for about 10 years. It's still a major part of my life, but I was studying it. And so I met these two women, and one of the women said, she's a psychologist, was talking about, she at the beginning of a couple years prior, she said she wanted this to be her year of pleasure. She wanted to do things that made her feel good. So when I speak of pleasure, I'm just not excluding sex or sexuality, but I wanted to have a much bigger conversation about what brings pleasure to us as Black women living within a society that over sexualizes us. So it's about taking our power back, um, taking our sexual power back, about taking back our understanding of what pleasure is. Because sexually, historically we've been, there's whole lots, there's lots of stories of how we have been used and abused sexually. And so, having had that experience of sexual abuse and knowing many people that have, having the historical sexual abuse of slavery, and all of the things. Am I supposed to? Can I say that? I think I'm supposed to be saying something else. Trigger warning. I know I'm late with the thing, but a lot of us have been through things when it comes to our physical physical way of life. And so I wanted to have a conversation we can learn to take our power back. And I wanted to be with someone who is of my generation so that we understand each other's language, each other's conversation, each other's where we started, and the evolution of pleasure within the lives of women. This information, I'm not saying that it's just for Gen X women; it's for all women. But I wanted somebody that I could identify with. So I specifically wanted a person of my generation, because I think each generation has different conversations or different understanding of the conversation. And so, anyway, I talked to several women who were brilliant in their own right. I've talked to therapists, psychologists, social workers, people who this was their calling, people who have, businesses with around that. And so what I finally found was a person who had no idea this is what she was doing. She started a company called the Goddess Portal. And not only did she start the company of the Goddess Portal, but she was also a part of my group when I studied the Divine Feminine. So I met her there years ago. And I knew her as a television producer. She used to be the television producer for the Today Show when Katie Couric was on there. And she's worked, done different documentaries with Obama and all types of amazing people. And if you listen to the podcast episode, you will get to hear her story. It's phenomenal. And so what was wonderful about this episode is not only did I get to hear about her life as a television producer, a writer, and a journalist and a professor, but how she shifted her life into working with women, which was her passion, to help women discover the power of pleasure. And so as the interview went on, like it's an amazing conversation. It really is an amazing conversation. And I think it lasts for about an hour and a half. So it's worth watching. But as we get into the conversation about pleasure, which is about 45 minutes in, she takes me on a journey of how she works with her clients. And it was fascinating because it wasn't just about your sexuality or your sexual prowess. It wasn't about getting an orgasm. It was about literally harnessing our powers as females and how we have been separated from that um, based off of reducing it to just sex and not a powerful entity that we can use to heal ourselves. And so she took this whole process, and I was just like, I need to go back and listen to it again. It's absolutely fascinating. But it was really good to hear her perspective, hear the women that were around her, the teacher that she learned from, which is a woman named Mama Gina. And so Mama Gina was her instructor, and I knew Mama Gina. I read her book years and years and years ago, and I didn't know she was involved in that work. But anyway, her name is Annette Freeman, and she teaches women through her company, the Goddess Portal. And I was so fascinated by this conversation. I said, I'm going to have to run this again. And I want her to come back on the podcast to talk about this. But I just think it's very important that as women, we understand that we have the powers to, we have the capability to access the powers where we can heal ourselves. There's so many people out there talking about therapy, which is great. I've been through therapy. Therapy was not my friend. And as my friend has told me that I probably needed to try different therapists, but I'm not the type of person that's going to go from person to person sharing my story over and over again to find the right person. And I knew instinctively that I needed something different than was being offered, because I really have the understanding that Black women, we have a certain type of trauma that is unique to us, especially if you're an American Black woman. We have epigenetics. We have trauma of slavery. We have trauma of Jim Crow. We have all these different traumas that are swirling around in our body that we were born into and born with, on top of living our day-to-day lives. And that article in Yale School of Medicine confirms my thought process that I had it was almost 15 years ago now when I went to see a therapist. And I was like, this isn't for me. And even the therapist, it was a white woman, because where I lived, I didn't know any Black therapists. And it wasn't, at that time, it really wasn't a conversation in the Black community to talk about therapy. Go pray about it, get in your prayer closet and pray about it, read the Bible, trust God, which is great. But God also created therapists. But here's what hasn't happened until recently is trauma-informed therapy is new, is relatively new, and especially amongst Black folks, right? Because people didn't believe that we had traumas and that we felt pain and that we felt anxiety and depression, because our people understand us as being strong and funny and, smart, and then all the other stuff they think about us. But I knew that when I had this conversation, Annette was somebody that I could trust with my audience, because I'm very cautious about who I put in front of my audience. I don't want anybody that's going to go too far left, too far right in any conversation, because safety is very important to me when people are listening. And so I knew I could trust her with this conversation. I knew that she would give me informed information, not just something she experienced or something that she felt, that she had studied it. I knew that she had studied it for years before she even created her own company. She had studied it several years before and had used it in her own life. And not only used it in her own life, had evidence of the methods that she was teaching worked. And if you listen to the interview, you get to hear all of that, like stuff she put in place worked. It's working, I should say. It continues to work in her life. And I get so excited about this conversation, because it's one of those things that for a long time, there's things in the black girls don't talk about, right? If you are sexually free, you're considered a whore or a slut. You're considered, what do the kids call it now? Thought, the chick on the side. Is that what it is? Is that what I don't know. I don't know. That chick over there. I think that's what my guy kid said. It means that chick over there, auntie. But it's one of those things where we have to have these conversations. We have to create a toolkit for ourselves that allows for healing. I love the ideas of the NAP ministry, talking about rest. And she's not the only one that says it. Several people say it. Rest is a revolutionary act because we have been burdened with work our whole lives, our whole existence for generations and generations back. And then I love the work of Stephanie Perry, the Exodus Summit, and encouraging Black women to take sabbaticals and take breaks. Whoever even thought that? Whoever in your life, we always say, "Oh my God!" And I have an interview with Stephanie Perry on the podcast as well. But who in your life, you always say, "If I could just have 3 months off." Well, how about plan for 3 months off? Like, save your money. If you say, okay, well, I'm going to work hard for 9 months and then I'm going to take a sabbatical at my job, or I'm going to quit my job and just find another one. However you want to do it. I don't know, whatever works for you. But having that time to yourself to really just unravel the things, right? So, in talking to Annette and just planning out this, let's talk about the planning of the podcast because I want you to listen to the conversation and listen not just to hear her story, but see yourself in her story. Like times where you have, like, said, I want my life to be different and didn't know how. And like, I need to heal from this aspect of my life and I don't know how to do it. And this is just one of the ways. There's so many, they call it alternative health, but I just call it health freedom. You can make decisions to be free and be healthy and be well. And whatever that is for you, it's different for everybody. But the one thing I loved about Annette's conversation is that it wasn't just a theory, it's actual something that she studied and that she's utilizing in her life. So it was fantastic. But getting to that conversation, I asked her, I think from the time I asked to the time we had actually did an interview was about a month. And so I went, and every interview I do a lot of research on the people because I want to be clear on who they are. I want to make sure that I'm not talking about stuff that's already out there. I want to have a different conversation, a unique perspective, and one that is perspective of what Black Women Amplified represents. So I don't want to hear just people's talking points. I even have, sometimes publicists will reach out to me. A lot of times publicists reach out to me. I just returned emails of 3 publicists this week with authors who, we'll see. I'm going to read their books and see if I want to have a conversation with them. And one happens to be a guy from London, shockingly. But anyway, I do a lot of research on them because I want to have a conversation that is for this platform, not just any conversation. Oh, what I was saying, publicists will actually send questions, like these are the questions to ask them because these are the questions that they have been prepped on. I don't want those questions. I come up with my own questions. I have stacks and stacks of questions from past interviews. One day I said I'm going to put a book of questions out because I create, before I really got into this, starting to interview people, I really wanted to study the craft, but not go to journalism school. So I started watching the great interviewers, Barbara Walters, Oprah Winfrey, Diane Sawyer, and several other people who are great interviewers, political interviewers, personal, lifestyle interviewers, entertainment interviewers, and just really getting into a rhythm. And I didn't want to imitate anybody. I know that Oprah always says that she used to imitate Barbara Walters when she first came out because she didn't really know what she was doing. because she came out of journalism school and she was doing newscasting, which is completely different than interviewing. But the one thing I knew about myself is because being a hairstylist, I learned how to be a great conversationalist, doing freelance work, and working for working for a magazine and working in the record industry. I know how to pinpoint certain topics really quickly, and I had to, figure out what is my angle, what is my perspective, and what is the information that I want to get out of a person. So I knew with this conversation of pleasure, because it was so important to the self-care conversation that I was having overall with the podcast, that I wanted to make sure that I got as much information as possible for each of you and myself. I was curious. I was like, oh, this is, it was interesting because as I was having the conversation, I was unraveling some things and, myself. This is why I'm sorry. This is why I have to have I'm going to have to get a Patreon page, because there's some conversations that we need to have that are going to have to be private on Zoom, and just people who are invited, invited people of the tribe. I don't want to have these conversations publicly, so I'll just leave it there. But I really want for us to have these conversations. If you like this, don't forget, please subscribe to this page. I'm growing this page. I'm going to come to you with more conversations. All the interviews will be done on the podcast, the audio side, and you can get the audio version here on YouTube. But subscribe to the page and listen to these conversations with dynamic women. And as I gear up for season 4, I'm going to give you more and more behind the scenes. Also, we're starting a newsletter so that I can give you even more information. But you can always go to blackwomenamplified.com and find out about all the happenings with Black Women Amplified. And I definitely want to have more conversations with each of you. So I know I'll probably have to go through behind a paywall. And I don't know if I can do this here on YouTube or use Patreon, but we're going to go behind a wall and have some private conversations. Because I think as Black women, we got to have some there's a lot going on and there's a lot coming at us. And so we need to have some secret meetings. Maybe that's what I'll call it, secret meetings for Black women. Oh, let me write that down. That's a good idea. Secret meetings for Black women. But yeah, so hold on. Black women. I always keep a notebook and a paper because I'm always coming up with some idea for something. Whether it gets developed or not, write your ideas down because you never know when you're going to need them. So anyway, conversation day comes and I'm a little nervous because I'm always excited, nervous, but I was nervous because Annette is a bona fide journalist. Like she's worked with some of the top people in the industry. And I'm like, and I'm going to interview her? Oh my God. So we go through the interview and we get done. And she's like, you are really good at this. I was like, and it just meant a lot coming from her. And then she sent me a follow-up email saying the same thing. It meant a lot coming from her. Her and Dr. Ray Wynn Grant, who's on here as well. And she's a television personality in she's a wildlife ecologist. And I was just like, oh, it made me feel good because all of the work that I had put into it just like paid off. Because I never wanted to sound like I don't ever want the podcast to sound like, and how did you get started? And where did you grow up? And, I don't want it to be robotic and canned and feel like, just every other interview. I want to have a conversation, but I want it to be a smart conversation. I want it to be fun. when it needs to be fun. I want it to be serious when it needs to be serious. And I want to be prepared for my questions and my direction and my plan, but to also leave space for organic conversations, because oftentimes I write out between 20 and 50 questions to get started, and it dwindles down to probably about 12 questions. I write out 50 and it dwindles down to about 12 questions. And then I put a conversation arc in it. That's my method. Because I know the direction I want the conversation to go through, but oftentimes it'll just go off book and it'll be very organic. And I'm the type of person that there are many interviewers that want to go just stick to the questions. And so if somebody asks something, they'll just go right back to the question. And if they don't, I've done so much research on the person that I kind of know what they're going to say and what they're not going to say. And I can kind of get a feel of who they are. And I didn't know that much about Annette, but I know that she's this free person and will talk about anything. I'm much more reserved than she is. So it pushed me to come out of my reservedness, if that's a word. But I say all that to say is that in preparing for this, I knew that I wanted it to be a conversation that women listen to and can get some guidance for themselves. Whatever that is for the individual, it's up to you all. But I wanted to make sure I gave enough information, had enough of the depth of the conversation so that women and men, I think men need to hear the conversation as well, but so that we can get a full understanding of the power of pleasure, that it's not just about having intercourse or having an orgasm. It's just a whole energy, a whole power that we possess that we're disconnected from, right? We're very disconnected from our pleasure power, our sexual power. And, many people will tell you have to deny it, and so many years we have denied it. We've denied our sexuality. We've denied our sexual, our understanding of what it is within us. And we've all gotten a lot of wrong information, lots of wrong information. Many of us didn't even have those, my conversation with my mom was just don't have it, and if you do have it and you're not married, this is who you're going to be in life. This is just it. So it becomes this taboo. It becomes a very religious based conversation, and it continues to give our power to other people. So I wanted to have a conversation where we could take our power back. So if you listen to it, put in the comment section and let me know what you think about it. The comment section of the, you can listen to it here on YouTube, and you can put your comments in on the YouTube page, or you can, if you want to DM me something private and we can talk about it on the podcast, you can DM me on the Black Women Amplified Instagram page. And yeah, so I think that, I think it's a wonderful conversation. I think that it's something that you could listen to with your peers, your friends, your sisters, your cousins, and start to have conversations about the power of pleasure. Change the conversation from this over-sexualized view that people have of Black women, of Black girls. And that and when you're having it, because my generation, like I said, my mother didn't have that conversation with me, except don't have it. So if you're a mom of a young girl, a young person, if they're in those teenage years or whatever years you decide to have those conversations, or if you never had that conversation with your kids and you want to, and not that this is a kid conversation, so don't play this for them and say, listen to this. Like, you can pick out, you can pick out pieces of it and have a better understanding. So maybe you can have a better conversation with your sisters or even your man. You want to have a discussion of, let's, or your partner or your your whatever the person is that you're having relations with, you all can have better conversations about it so that you can feel satisfied and feel alive and vibrant when you're being intimate with one another or being intimate with yourself, whatever that looks like for you. And so the conversation, the episode is called The Power of Pleasure, and it's available now on any podcast, all the podcast places, Apple, Spotify, iHeart, iHeartRadio? I don't know all the places, but it's there. And I invite you to listen to it. If you have littles around, if you have little kids around, put your earplugs in. The first part of it is her story, which is magnificent. I definitely tell you to look at that. And then the second half is about the power of pleasure. And it's something you can listen to with your partner. You can, if you have older, college kids, listen to it with them so that you all can, we got to have different conversations about our sex and our sexuality and how harnessing the power of pleasure can be healing, especially people who have gone through sexual traumas. Yeah. So I just wanted to share that with you. I'll give you a little bit behind the scenes of this week's episode, The Power of Pleasure. Next week we have coming up is a interview with Ishi Robinson, who's written a book called Sweetness in the Skin. And we had a great conversation about her book and her journey as a Jamaican woman throughout the world and her life as a new novelist. This is her first novel and it's amazing. It's based off of a 14-year-old girl named Pumpkin Patterson. And Pumpkin is a vibrant young lady who is resourceful and smart and is dealing with her life in a very special way. So I can't wait for you all to hear that. And then we wrap up season 3. Anyway, have an amazing day. Always check out blackwomenamplify.com. We have merchandise over there that you can buy. You have... there's a link that'll take you to our journal, the Self-Love Journal. You can tap into it here on this YouTube page or go to the website and tap into it. And I keep saying I'm going to pull it out, but it's an amazing journal if you're on a self-love journey, if you're on a self-discovery journey, if you want to get to know more about yourself. It's available on Amazon, or you can buy it through the link that's here on this page. But it's a way to help to get to know yourself better. And so it's a perfect accompaniment to this season, as well as, and I developed it for this season, but for this season, as well as if you get into the power of pleasure for yourself. So have an amazing day, and I will talk to you all soon. I'll probably be back tomorrow to have a conversation. There's so many conversations I want to have now that I'm doing this on the YouTube. Please subscribe and please share this with your friends and like the episode. And to those that have subscribed, I think I'm at 107 now. Welcome. Thank you for being here. And I can't wait to talk to you more. Have an amazing day. Take care. Bye.